Hi, my name is Andrew Neang. I'm a PhD student from the University of Washington's Department of Human-Centered Design and Engineering, and I'll be presenting on our investigation of the social and scientific work that is undertaken before and during the technical work of data integration. So substantial research on data integration sharing has found it to be something of a logistical nightmare, and has primarily focused on outlining the factors and barriers, whether it be collaboration politics or disciplinary differences, for example, that complicate the process of data exchange. And yet in various locales, researchers do share data. Effective processes for documenting, exchanging, and reusing data do emerge between groups and collaborations. So how does this all happen? This study can be seen as a return to the drawing board of sorts to examine how these practices for integrating data get hashed out, established, and routinized. And really, in doing this, we want to shift from questions of when or whether data will be shared towards questions of how researchers go about exchanging and reusing data. What we're really trying to strive for is to move from the delineations of factors, of barriers, towards particular kinds of work that researchers do in developing practices for overcoming barriers and bringing their concerns into alignment. And in doing this, we frame data integration as kind of a coordinative work rather than an exchange. So as part of this work, we examine this topic through an empirical investigation of a multidisciplinary ocean science collaboration called CBOMS, something that we started back in 2017. This collaboration is comprised of researchers based in various academic research laboratories across 3 different countries. And as part of this work, we conducted semi-structured interviews and supplemented those interviews with participant observations in their group meetings, presentations, and demos that were given. Just for context purposes, the field of ocean science, as with many other scientific disciplines, generates and uses vast amounts of data, different data, types of data that come in different spatial and temporal resolutions. So examples here you see include observational data generated by different instruments at sea, satellite, model output, molecular data, just to name a few. So the CBOMS collaboration reflects some of the classic difficulties of large collaborative science projects and many of the typical barriers to data sharing and integration. However, we found in our study that researchers also actively negotiated these barriers in order to establish data sharing and data integration efforts. The ocean scientists in our investigation repeatedly used the notion of distance when describing difficulties around developing new collaborations with CBOMS. These distances, which include discipline, make, and familiarity, provide background for understanding the concerns, challenges that make sense-making conversations and development of new work practices necessary. And all this is much more detailed in our paper, so feel free to take a gander if you're interested. And to really get a sense of how the individuals within the ocean science within this ocean science network navigate with and around all these considerations, I'm just going to briefly talk about 2 scenarios from our paper that highlight different situations of collaboration around the problem data integration. So the first scenario here we have here focuses on how independent practices are brought into alignment to facilitate data integration. In this scenario, we detail how the initial data sets produced by the observations seen here on the left could not be used by the modeler. And as a result, the modeler agreed to produce, or I should say, correction, the observationalists agreed to produce more data which would be tailored to the specific needs of the modeler's model. What's interesting here is that in producing the second round of data, the observationalist is actually attempting to change his practices of data production to account for a particular site of secondary use. And this scenario here, it really focuses on the emergence of new roles for integration work. One of the major subprojects of CBOMS involves a large number of collabs collaborating within a single modeling lab in order to figure out how to bring a variety of data types together. And in this scenario, the junior modeler seen here in the middle has taken on the work of facilitating this process as part of their PhD work. And really what's interesting about the junior modeler's situation is that data integration is not a process within their work, but rather it's a central object. And so with all this in mind, this work really has caused attentions to the diversity of types of coordination and relevant social and organizational concerns involved in data integration. It really highlights the work researchers engage in, figure out how to integrate data, and not only their considerations of whether and when to integrate data. And this really moves us somewhat beyond a simple barriers and incentives model, and really casts the problem of exchanging data in the sciences as a system, as not a system of walls that need to be knocked down, but as a system of bridges that might be built. With that said, thank you for your time. Feel free to ask, shoot me an email if you have any questions.